around the corner. And if you live in Florida or anywhere up and down the East Coast, as you know what that means, the start of Atlantic hurricane season. So get your hurricane plans together. You may want some advice about what to do regarding your medications. So I'm Dr. Madeline Camejo, Chief Pharmacy Officer for Baptist Health, and Dr. Angelica Berni of Specialty Pharmacy at Baptist Health. We're going to talk to you about a little preparation can go a long way when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy during the hurricane. That's coming up next on Ask the Doc.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.
Welcome to Ask the Doc, the show that encourages viewers to send in their health questions. So let's kick things off with a question from one of our viewers. Our first viewer question comes to us from Facebook, and it's from Kitty, and she asks, my husband and I just moved down to Florida and have never experienced a hurricane before. We both have severe chronic conditions and take medications for them. So how can we protect ourselves and make sure we're able to take our medications regularly in the event of a major storm? Dr. Camejo, Madeline, this is a real concern for many people in South Florida, right?
I'm sure it is. And Kitty, that's a great question. Thanks for sending it in. You know, first things first, make sure you have an ample supply of medication on hand, at least 2 to 3 weeks worth, and stored in a waterproof container in its original packaging. That's really important. You don't want your meds to get destroyed if you have to get out and run, or especially during a flooding situation. If you don't have enough meds, make sure you get your meds refilled early. During an emergency declaration, many states allow the patients to get their medications early. You just have to call the pharmacy, and they make sure that they will fill it under that emergency declaration. The other thing I would say is create an emergency medication kit and any medical supplies that you may need to go or have on hand, which includes number one. The first thing I would do is keep a list of all your medications in case you get separated from your medications. A lot of that times you can also make that medication list on your phone. 2, supply. Maintain that 2-week supply. That is really important. That's important to have. 3, I would safeguard. Place your medications or packages in a watertight container or bag. 4, make a kit, a first aid kit. Include bandages, antiseptic solutions, over-the-counter antibiotic creams, and eye wash. Sometimes with the breeze, things get out there, and if you're trying to clean anything and cut yourself, you have that medication kit, or if anything gets in your eyes, you have an eye wash kit. And the last thing I would always make sure too is storage. Have an ice or a freezer, a couple of gel packs available for any refrigerated meds, and a small cooler if you lose power and need to have those meds refrigerated. Now, the other thing I would make sure is if you're insulin dependent, it is recommended that insulin be stored in a refrigerator. But during a hurricane, if you do lose power and make sure you just leave the insulin in that refrigerator or even in a cool place. Insulin is even good out of the refrigerator for at least 28 days. So make sure you don't forget, and don't ever freeze your insulins, because insulin frozen is no longer viable. Make sure you do that. Now, the other thing is I have a dog, and my dog is insulin dependent too. And there are many of our animals that need insulin. There are cats and dogs. So make sure, please don't forget your pet's meds too, and fill them as well. Call your vet and make sure all your pets are filled as well.
Thanks, Madeline. So much great information here. And we got another question. This one is from Joanne. She just reached to us via YouTube. Dr. Camejo, I live with my elderly mother. She's not very mobile, suffers from a couple of chronic diseases, takes medication that isn't available from the local pharmacy, and needs to be refrigerated. I'd love some advice.
Joanne, thanks for sharing your story with us. You sound like a great daughter, and your mom is a really lucky woman. But Angelica, as a director of Specialty Pharmacy, I think this is right up your alley. Would you mind answering Joanne's question?
I would be happy to offer some advice, Joanne. So it sounds like your mother gets her medication from what we call a specialty pharmacy. A specialty pharmacy is a little different from your traditional retail pharmacy due to the type of medication that they dispense and provide their patients. Oftentimes, these medications have to be physically delivered to you at your home or preferred location. So there's a couple of things here that I would recommend for medication preparedness. Number one is if you do not hear from your specialty pharmacy, it's important that you call them. They work with your insurance to get an override, as Madeline mentioned, so you can get enough medication on hand to cover you for the storm. We always recommend at least 2 weeks because you never know how long you might be without being able to get to a store or being able to get onto the streets. And as I mentioned, remember, those medications are delivered to you. So make sure that you are home or you have someone home who's able to receive them. Number two, the other thing is if anyone is on a refrigerated medication, like your mom, make sure to have plenty of ice, coolers, or see if you can maybe even stay with a family member or at a location that has a generator or backup for refrigeration. That's going to be key. Next, I would say keep those medications in a safe location, especially many of these chronic medications have special handling requirements. Those can include oral chemotherapy or different ones. So if you are on anything that can be hazardous, just make sure it's in a safe location. Make sure that they are also in a sealed, tight, waterproof container. Lastly, if you are on one of those medications that can be considered hazardous, I recommend to bring a pair of gloves in case someone has to help administer that medication to you. Another thing is make sure to have extra supplies, such as needles, maybe sharp containers, so you can properly dispose of the medication after use. Have your supplies together with those medications.
Angelica, that is great information. Another thing you might want to consider is finding a small generator that's available at stores like Home Depot, Lowe's, or any of the hardware stores out there. They're simple to operate, and if the power goes out, a small generator can help keep refrigeration running or any other valuable equipment that you may need to have. Make sure you keep the generator outside the house. Don't run the generator in the house. Make sure you run a long extension cord to the outside, because at the end of the day, we don't want to see you getting carbon monoxide poisoning. So make sure you keep everything outside the house.
Thank you so much, Madeline and Angelica. This is great feedback. Our next question just came from our website at AllHealth TV, and it's coming from Tisha. My father has sleep apnea, and he uses a CPAP machine. I'm extremely concerned about him being able to use that machine if the power goes out. What advice do you have? Should he evacuate to a shelter immediately? He really likes staying home. Madeline, Angelica, what advice can we offer Tisha?
Well, Tisha, I can think of a couple of things off my top of my head, but I bet Angelica can too. I would say, number one, if your machine runs out of batteries, get some extra batteries and make sure they are charged. Two, some CPAP machines that need to be plugged in can still last for a number of hours once power is lost. So just make sure you have plenty of charge before the power goes out. It was mentioned, number three, it was mentioned before, but if you can afford it, get a backup generator. It's a good idea. So I thought about three, Angelica. I think it's your turn now.
It's going to be hard to kind of top that list, but I'll think of a few more. I would say the next thing to really consider is having extra bottles of distilled water on hand, because that's really the only water that can be used with these types of machines. It's crucial because it really helps prevent mold and bacteria. And having a supply of distilled water ensures that you can continue to use that machine safely and reduces the risk of any respiratory issues that can occur in an emergency, especially like a hurricane. The next thing would be to ensure that you're calling your utility company and inform them that you have a CPAP machine. They actually might be able to add you to the priority list for repairs after the storm, so that will be a part of their emergency response and part of being on a special grid. Next, if you require oxygen support, it is going to be so important that you have extra tanks available. Another thing too is that if you use inhalers, even if it's on an as-needed basis, it's not something you use every day, it's really crucial to have that on hand in the event of emergency. A hurricane can cause debris and other environmental factors that can agitate some things called like COPD and asthma and even more.
Absolutely. We have some more information, but here we have something that we want to show you as well.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.
And we have some more information, Madeline and Angelica, that you want to share. We have a bit of a goofy question from one of our viewers, and it's come from a YouTube question, and it's called, I know this sounds goofy, but I have reflux disease and have really hard time if I eat a lot of pizza and other foods like that. But the problem is after a storm, that's usually only food that's easy to get. What kind of healthy foods can I keep on hand that I might actually eat?
So I would say if it's healthy foods that you're looking to eat and have some dietary restrictions, buy some whole grain foods. That's one of the things that's important. Foods, vegetables, low sodium canned meats, anything like tuna and chicken, low sugar protein bars and cereals, anything that there's also non-dairy milk alternatives that are also shelf staples that don't need refrigeration, so you can use for cereals or coffee. Canned vegetables also provided essential nutrients, and it brings a great thing for people who have high blood pressure and certain cardiac conditions. You want to have low salt. Another thing you might want to do is herbs and spices can add flavor to meals without relying on higher sodium sauces or any condiment that you don't want to have for sodium. And 5, before the storm hits, turn down the temperature in your refrigerator and freezer and make it extra cold, and that will help your food last much longer in case you lose power. And 6, don't forget to go to your pet store before the storm and make sure you get your pet's foods.
These are great tips. Thank you so much. Angelica, do you have anything to add?
You know, I always say pets are family, so it's so crucial, as Madeline mentioned, to make sure that we're thinking of them as well. You know, depending on the type of medications that you might be on or certain conditions that you have, it's just really important to look at certain different foods. So let's say you are a diabetic, looking at foods that maybe are lower in sugar, not using your go-to snacks that you might see always available in your grocery stores. And Madeline mentioned, you know, if you have high blood pressure as well, making sure that you're looking at things that have that lower sodium, making sure you're drinking plenty of water, making sure you're hydrated. Those are going to be really big factors when you are dealing with an emergency and may not be able to use your normal day-to-day foods.
Thank you so much. We have a promo that we want to share with you guys, and then we'll be back with more questions.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.
Madeline and Angelica, I do have another question for you from one of our viewers, and it was actually from Yusuf. And I think this is really important to ask, especially during hurricane season. He says that his wife has multiple sclerosis, and she says that she cannot be without air conditioner. She'll get extremely sick, and she's not very mobile. So we want to travel. They don't want to travel out of town. So what should we be considering when choosing a shelter, and what kind of medical supplies should we bring?
So the biggest thing is that everyone should have emergency food, which we talked about, right? Factoring in if you have certain conditions that you need to be mindful of, making sure that you have plenty of water, your medication, at least that 2-week supply, and the medical supplies. But if you have special circumstances, that now just adds another layer of complexity to the hurricane preparation and plan. But there are specific shelters that should be able to accommodate you and your wife in the event of a storm. So with multiple sclerosis, it's not uncommon to be sensitive to heat. So I recommend stocking up on instant ice packs and help manage that heat sensitivity. Battery-powered fans are another great option. So make sure to have extra batteries on hand. And staying hydrated is also key, right? So make sure to drink plenty of water. Additionally, it's important to bring those essential supplies and anything that she uses on a day-to-day basis to keep her as comfortable as possible.
Thank you so much, Angelica. Okay, questions keep coming in. I love it. Here's one from Marisol via Facebook. I've never had a horrible hurricane experience, but I take medication for anxiety. And as we approach hurricane season, my blood pressure goes up and it gets much worse if it looks like we're in the path of a storm. What precautions should I take to make sure I'll be able to keep my blood pressure and my anxiety under control? Great question. Madeline, Angelica, can you help Marisol with some advice?
Absolutely, Kathy. Marisol, I want you to know that it's very common for people to have and get very anxious when there's an upcoming storm. So just the thing you need to do is recognize your emotion and try these tips to alleviate your anxiety. Number one, I would say create a plan, a well-prepared plan for you or your family that can help reduce anxiety and chaos before, during, and after. Make an evacuation plan. Make sure you're complete in your preparedness, and especially with all the kits that we've talked about, it'll help you feel in control and it'll make you feel better. Two, I would say be informed. Stay up to date on the weather information, warnings. Make sure you have a portable battery-operated radio. If you're aware of the latest information, you may gain some sense of control over the situation. The other thing I would do, number three, is talk it out. Share your fears with your family members and friends, or a counselor, or any other who can offer emotional support. And if you have your pets, it's always great to have your pets and cuddle with them during a storm, and that also helps with your anxiety. Number four, I would say do activities. A lot of children can get really anxious and scared too. So keep them busy, build an indoor campsite, put up tents, give them coloring books, or even play board games. You can also read a book, play cards, even clean out your closet. Those are great things to do inside the house while the storm is there, or just get some simple rest. Angelica, is there anything you'd like to add?
You did mention talking it out, and my family would always be the first to say that I'm that person. If I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I talk it out, and it kind of really puts me at ease. But I would say the next best piece of advice that I have is just to stay informed. Prepare in advance what you're already doing by asking these questions. It's so important to be prepared. Ensure that you have a safe space to stay in during the storm. And one of my favorite recommendations is to practice relaxation technique. This can include deep breathing, meditation, whatever you do or can find to put you at peace. Practice those regularly because you also want to make sure that they're easier to use when you actually need them.
Amazing tips. Thank you so much, ladies. But I have another question that just came in right now from Facebook, and it's on the topic of what we're discussing. And he's worried about his pets during a storm. Can he bring them to a shelter?
So there are shelters who will take pets. You just need to call ahead of time and make sure that you can take your pet in. But there are several shelters that will take your pet.
Yeah. And, one thing I would also add is that making sure, Madeline mentioned it several times, right? Is bringing your pet's medications and their supplies,
Yes.
toys, different things like that. It's going to be so important that your pet is comfortable because they also have anxiety, and for them, it's a little bit harder to do those relaxation techniques that we talked about.
Freddie, I hope that gives you peace of mind. I know it gives me peace of mind. So, and just in case you missed it the first time, a couple of times, I'm going to bring it in again. Here's yet another chance to find out where to send in your questions.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.
So we did have a viewer sent in a question earlier, and I want to pull that up for you again, Madeline and Angelica, because I think it's important, and I think he brings up such a fantastic point. And it's talking about the food that is available after, and he feels that those kind of foods, his name is Hank, he feels that those kind of foods give him a little indigestion. They don't always sit well. We're talking those foods like pizza, maybe some processed foods. And usually that's what happens, and that's what's available after a storm. Can you suggest, Madeline and Angelica, some better food options, maybe that we can stock up on or we can focus on so that we can have handy and they're also healthier for someone like him?
So sure, I think number one, buy what I would say whole grain breads and fresh fruits and vegetables, anything that's low sodium, like canned meats, like tuna or chicken. Look at some low sugar protein bars or cereals. Those are really good as well. Two, look at what I would say, like non-dairy milk alternatives that you can keep on a shelf and are not needed and refrigerated. There's several of them if you go, even powdered milk that you could use with your coffee or your cereal. Three, I would say look at canned vegetables, also provide essential nutritions. They are lower in sodium and they have a lower sodium option than those that are needed especially for those who do salt intake that have to watch out for blood pressure or even certain cardiac conditions. Number four, I would say look at herbs and spices because people like to put stuff to make their food taste better, especially when you're maybe relying on things out of a can that can add flavor to meals. Use herbs and spices. Those are much better than salt or any other sodium condiment that's out there. And one of my favorites is peanut butter jelly. Those are always great to have as well. They're good in nutrition. But the other thing I would say, number five, is before the storm hits, turn down your refrigerator and freezer. Make it extra cold. And this was going to help you make your food last much longer. And if you lose power, it really will keep that longer, the refrigerator from, losing that much refrigeration. And the last thing I would say, number six, is don't forget to go to the pet store before the storm. Our pets need food too.
I agree.
Madeline, Angelica, this is so helpful. Angelica, is anything you want to add? Because I do want to bring in another viewer question.
No, let's go to that next viewer question. I think that's great. Madeline really touched on it and just making sure that, you have options. I say that's the biggest thing. We don't want to do stress eating and finding a way to relax. But let's go to that next viewer.
Absolutely, Angelica. This is what I love about Ask the Doc. We're getting all these questions in. The next one is from Caroline. She says, I'm concerned about after the storm. How can I stay safe from injury?
One of the things that I would definitely do is make sure that you wear long sleeves. If you're going outside, make sure you keep your hands, with gloves on. If you're picking up debris, don't pick up anything that you don't have gloves on. There's going to be a lot of glass and a lot of sharp objects out there. So those are things that I would definitely do. Another thing is make sure you have long sleeves, long shirts. Make sure also that you have, shoes. Don't go out in sandals, especially after a storm. We see a lot of people cut their feet. I think that's a big issue. And the other thing I would say is stay out of floodwaters. Don't ever, walk around in a floodwater or flood area because you don't know that floodwaters can be easily contaminated. And make sure you want to do the do's and don'ts of a hurricane. Stay out of the floodwaters. That's number one. That has definitely a lot of contaminants. The other thing I would say is stay away from power lines. Number two, again, we talked about that earlier. You don't want anything that's overhanging. Call the electric company. Make sure you report them. Three, I would say stay away from tap water. Don't drink that tap water until local authorities are determined that it's safe. Sometimes during a storm, the pipelines of water are contaminated because they break. So make sure until you hear from authorities to stay away from, don't drink the tap water until you're actually asked. And Angelica, I know you could probably think of a few things as well.
Absolutely. So I would say the next thing is you need to protect yourself from animals. So that's going to be a big thing. While we love our pets, there's going to be some other animals that are out there that we just need to protect ourselves from. So Madeline mentioned about wearing long sleeves, long pants, socks. A big thing right now is going to be mosquitoes, right? After a storm. Right. So making sure that we have that non-toxic insect repellent. And anytime that you're outside, you just want to try to avoid getting bit by mosquitoes. They carry diseases and cause more problems than any benefit. The next thing too is just stay away from wild or stray animals. They're not unfamiliar with you. Don't approach them. We're not sure, if they've had their vaccinations and things like that. And whenever uncertain, just call 911. The next thing I would say is be careful when you get back home about what you eat. So we talked about in hurricanes that you might lose a lot of that electricity and you're really not sure if your food actually kept. So throw away food that may have come in contact with, let's say, flood water, maybe wasn't refrigerated due to those power outages. It'll just be better for everyone. I would say the next thing too then is also making sure to clean and disinfect wounds. This will help prevent infection. So sometimes actually people might think that the biggest risk is during a hurricane, but there's actually a large risk also after a hurricane and other natural disasters. So making sure that you're safe as you're cleaning and picking up things outside, and just making sure you're able to disinfect if you do get hurt. Another big piece, I would say, and something really to factor in, is taking care of your emotional health. After a hurricane, it's natural to experience those strong emotions. Getting assistance to
Right.
cope with stress, making sure that you're able to cope with that anxiety, it'll help you and your family recover quicker. Try those relaxation techniques, it'll really help.
Angelica, Madeline, these are phenomenal tips. Thank you so much for being here with us on Ask the Doc. And thank you to the viewers who sent in questions. We appreciate that in getting us ready for hurricane season. Again, thank you. And that's all the time that we have for today. I'm Kathy Buccio, and I'll see you next time on Ask the Doc.
Send in your questions to questions@allhealthtv.com or AllHealthGo on Facebook or YouTube, or visit the Ask the Doc page on our website, allhealthtv.com.